Hello, everybody. Welcome. And I want to welcome our guest for today. I'm very, very excited about this conversation. This is Matthias Barker, who is a long time, for me, I've thought of him as a podcaster who speaks on trauma, but which which has been very important because when you started out, there were not a
Mhm.
lot of podcasts on trauma.
Yeah.
Uh, he is the founder of estrangement.com, which works with family and child estrangement.
Mhm.
Family, adult child estrangement?
Yeah, adult child. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
So adults. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So grateful to be here. Thank you, Janina. It's an honor to get to speak with you. I love our interactions, and when we get to see each other, it just brightens my whole day. So grateful to speak with you.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us about estrangement work because
Hmm.
I mean I've certainly done some work as a therapist with
Yeah,
adult children and their parents. And there's certainly something very special about a parent who is willing to work on reestablishing and healing an estranged relationship. And
that's right.
obviously, a lot to be said for the adult child
Hmm.
having the determination rather than just walking away.
Yeah. Well, I think we're in kind of a unique cultural moment. I mean, I think that there's always been estrangement in the sense that there's always been family conflict. I mean, that's been here since the beginning. But I think I don't know, maybe even just as soon as 50 years ago, it was a lot more of a worry that you would be like cut off or disowned by your parents, for, I don't know, changing religions or marrying the wrong person or something like that, than the idea of an adult kid cutting off contact with the parent is something that, I don't know, it like isn't brand new, like it's happened, but it's maybe happening in larger numbers recently
Mhm.
than we've previously been aware. So it's kind of a unique moment. I mean, you and I met several years ago. Your close friend, Frank Anderson, was a mentor of mine for about 3 years, and I just had the joy of learning under someone just so wise and well studied and experienced as him. And so I traveled around and followed him at his workshops and got to just be his plus one at all the fun conferences. And that's where I met you. And
Right at the Psychotherapy Networker Conference.
that's right. That's right. And I got to sit in on your lecture and was just blown away with the integration work that you've been able to do that I think few have been able to articulate so clearly. Just the somatic, the parts work, the neurophysiology of trauma, even working in just themes around the unconscious there's just so many threads that I've seen you pull on to bring into something so not just sophisticated, but healing and clear in a way that so few have. And I was like, oh my word, wow. And Frank was like, oh, you got to meet her. So we went to dinner. We've been to a couple dinners. And I just felt like a kid in a candy store. And I was asking you all these questions. I don't know if you remember. I was just like, okay, so here's because I have three little kids right now. So I'm like, my toddler, I don't know how to help with like she's throwing these tantrums and I want a trauma informed way to like offer containment. And so I just took the opportunity to sit with one of the, I don't know, the leading experts in the whole world. I'm like, well, if I could just ask a question, I'm gonna ask it. I'm gonna take my chance. And you were just so sweet with me and kind and just walked through a few of just my personal questions and just in a few sentences just brought clarity in a way that few people can. And I don't know. So I just think the world of you. I'm just so
Thank
grateful for that.
you. Thank you.
Mhm.
And so tell me more about how you help families really
That's
heal
right.
very old wounds.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was fortunate, I think, to have my training in the trauma world. So under Frank Anderson, like my training was in the parts work that he teaches. And I mean, a lot of people go into training in family, when it comes to family conflict, they might come at it from a systems perspective or there's lots of incredible systems out there, but it was a unique, maybe a toolkit to walk into that conundrum with, having the trauma toolkit that I was fortunate to build with folks like, yourself and Frank and the people I got to learn under. And so I was really set from the beginning that healing was going to be at kind of the center of the whole program. So not just reconciliation. I think a lot of people kind of point that as the goal. It's like, well, how can we fix the family conflict? And I'm like, well, hold on. Is because people can be bonded in healthy ways or in unhealthy ways.
Right.
And so I don't want to like just bring someone back into this like codependent, enmeshed, parentified, whatever. I would hope that, whoever I'm speaking with, whether it's the adult kid or the parent that comes to me for help, that we can start with a place of healing and doing some of that internal work first so that you can come to the interaction with your family member from a grounded, from a place that is mature. That seemed to be the best approach in my view. So that's really kind of the foundation I laid everything on. I can speak more on it, but that's the
Yeah.
idea.
Well, give me some examples of how it goes, because as you're talking, I'm thinking of a family
Hmm.
where I didn't know to call it estrangement work then, but now
Hmm.
I do thinking back. I was working with a mother and her daughter, and then we were joined by her brother. Um, and one of I mean, the great thing was her mother was willing to meet, and 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 the other great thing was that the children wanted to have a family.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
right, that I think that's really the bottom line. But the difficulty we ran into was that you can't turn back the clock.
Yeah.
Like, because even if the parent changes, they can't be the parent you needed when you were 3.
Yeah. Yeah. The past is in the past. That's done.
Yeah, yes. And and
Hmm.
there's, there's a limit to how much people can change who they are.
Hmm. Certainly.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be fun just to even put our minds together and get your feedback on these ideas too. Because I think over the past year and a half, I started estrangement.com a year and a half ago, and I brought in, at that time, it was 1,000 folks. We're up to about 2,000 folks in the support program. And it's a program where we kind of have like a version of psychoeducation. Like I do kind of these video workshops where I kind of walk people through some of these principles. I'll tell you some of the ideas that I'd share there. And then we have
Mhm.
these Zoom support calls where it's really, I mean, similar to like grief groups or like where you kind of get together and you just kind of talk about the struggles that you've been in and receive support. So it's not therapy. It's not like a therapy replacement, but in some of those moments, I'll provide feedback and kind of draw people to the content that we're moving through and just bring people through that. But what I've noticed is like you have parents that come and they're really focused on trying to get the conversation back up and going because maybe their kid has cut them off and they haven't spoken to them in a year, 2 years. And they're like, how do I get them to talk to me again? And there's often external things that make it complicated. So it's like maybe they got married, the adult kid got married, and then maybe the new daughter-in-law or something kind of put a negative spin on the family and kind of talked to them into viewing things through a negative light. And so then maybe they have a child and then the daughter-in-law kind of stands in the way of, the grandparent relationship being able to establish because I don't know, the daughter-in-law has an opinion around that family system. So it's like, well, the daughter kind of ruined things. It was fine before, then the daughter came in. And then often the arc is like, well, it's often not just that simple. Um, let's zoom in. Not that we're trying to pick a good guy or a bad guy, but let's just zoom in and just see how complex this can be and see what we can do with it. I mean, another instance is parental alienation. That's very common. So, a mother and father divorce while the kid, let's say, is 10 or 11, 12, and then, mom, kid grows up with mom, and then later in life strikes up a friendship with dad and then starts to view mom in a negative light because you kind of hear dad's story. And then it's almost like the kid's taking sides. And it's like, well, hold on. Like my co-parent started to kind of speak negatively of me and is telling the kid lies. And now the kid believes lies about me. Like, what do I do in that situation? And so as much variety as there is in family, I suppose there is the variety of ways things can go wrong. But
Right.
the place I like to start with parents is something like, let's assume it's not just one or two interactions that exploded the whole relationship. And then certainly there can be outside factors, but like an analogy I like to use is, weeds can only grow when there's soil, right? So sometimes, like, there's a lie, like, let's say the lie is the weed. The lie can sprout up, and it's like, well, what do we do with that? But then I'm like, well, hold on. Was there hurt in the soil? Because it's really hard for lies to take root when there's not hurt in the soil.
Right.
And we don't take accountability for the lie. Like, there's more lies won't help things get better. Like, so we're not going to fall on our sword and grovel and pretend like, you're right, I'm this narcissistic, abusive mom. You're right, I never loved. Like, you're not going to claim all these crazy things. But we are going to look for kind of maybe the attachment wounds underneath that made it so that there was vulnerability so that those lies took root. So I was talking to a dad a few weeks ago. And he's like, well, my daughters won't speak to me. Daughter's 18. And I went through a hard divorce with her mother. Her mother moved to a different state, took the girls with, and I had to work and figure out job stuff because I wanted to live nearby, but just with my job, like I had to like figure out a way to like work remote or get a new job. So I was like 6 months before I could move out there. And my ex-wife told my daughter that it was because I cared more about money than cared about her. Like the reason that I didn't move out immediately was because I was greedy and money hungry. And I care more about money than my daughter, which is a total lie. And so the daughter won't talk to me because she thinks I care more about money than her. What do I even do in that situation? And my response is like, well, ask her what it was like when you weren't there for 6 months. Because there was 6 months where she didn't have her dad. But I couldn't because of the job. And I'm like, hold on, hold on. Of course. Like there's circumstances, there's limitations, there's all of that. That makes sense. But we have to acknowledge just because we had a good reason doesn't mean that there wasn't a wound there. And I wonder what it'd be like to start the conversation with something like, what was it like those 6 months when you were in a new town, going to a new school, um, and you needed your dad and he wasn't there? Because that's the facts of the situation. Dad wasn't there. And then she might say, well, it was really hard and it was scary and I didn't know what to do. And you needed to be there. I needed you, Dad, and you weren't there. And taking responsibility for that and being able to say, you're right, honey, I wasn't there. You needed me there and I wasn't. And what I call that is getting out of the story, which is like, well, I couldn't because of the job and your mom and she's lying, getting out of the story and into the struggle, which is like the emotional attachment content underneath that once you witness that, everything starts to settle. And then it's funny over and over again in the group, we see all the stories and the labels actually kind of fizzle out on their own accord without really having to debate them too much. If you can actually zoom in on the affect, on the emotion underneath, which is actually like the core thing, which is, Dad, I missed you. This was overwhelming. I needed you and I couldn't reach out to get to you. That's all
Right.
she's saying. And then when he followed that advice, things really started to turn around for the better.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Uh, and so are you doing all this work for all these work, all the work with all the families just yourself, or do you have people working under you?
Team of therapists. Yep. Yep. So I have two therapists that work as moderators. And so we have several calls each week that, like we said, we kind of offer support. And then we have the content, which I make. And then I have an operations team, which kind of makes sure that all the emails get responded to and everyone can find the Zoom links. And it's kind of a crazy nest trying to run an organization like that. But
Well, it's very, but very crucial. I know from having run a webinar series, people have to have their Zoom links,
I
and no
know
matter
it.
how many times you send them, they get lost.
I know it. And then my population too, working with parents and adult kids, is you'll have parents who just maybe the tech is challenging and they don't know how to log on. And some also staying up late on email, making sure people know how to get Zoom downloaded. And so it's like, but it's a labor of love because I just know that, I mean, you've experienced this. When you're working with families, you see transformations happen not just for the individual, but for the whole system. And it's like one insight cannot just increase the well-being of one person, but the whole family reaps the rewards of that. And that's just so cool to witness.
Yeah, that is cool. That is cool. Um, and I think it sounds really wise to start with the psychoeducation
Hmm.
because it makes it more kind of objective and universal,
Hmm.
right? It isn't just this terrible ex-husband or this terrible parent. It's
Yeah. Well,
And
and what's hard is like there's lots of like group forums online, like on Reddit or the Facebook comments, where it really does sometimes feel like it's team parent or it's team kid. And so you got like the folks that are like, oh, the narcissistic parents who are abusive and enmeshed, and I don't know, the devouring mother, like emotional incest. Like you get all the labels that can feel so pathologizing and
well, everybody's
intense.
constructing their own story.
Yeah. It just feels like the parts are going crazy in the comments. And then on the other side, too, there's like, well, the kids, they're entitled and selfish and ungrateful and they don't care about family anymore and they just are in their own world. And I'm like, I mean, one of the controversial things about my group is that it's open to parents and adult kids. Like both populations can join, not from the same families per se, but both demographics. And
Uh-huh.
Carl Pillimer, he's a researcher out of Cornell. He wrote in his book that there's no group that brings both people into it and steps outside of the polarity, but actually tries to step in the middle and have both populations represented. And I took that as a personal challenge. I was like, okay, I'll try. Like, I don't know if it'll work, but and there's sparks that fly, but we've been really fortunate to have just a sweet group that's like, all right, let's try to step out of our narrative, out of the story, out of the parts that just want to throw up defenses and try to get down to the woundedness that those parts hold. And that's just been incredibly fruitful. Like when everyone's joined in that same spirit, it's really sweet. So the psychoed does allow for that. It's a good container, it's a good structure for people to kind of go through. And then the groups, I think, make it embodied because so much of the work isn't just what happens up here. It's like you have to be witnessed. And so for parents to get to share their story and have other parents and other moms who know what it feels like to see that and be like, oh, me too. That
Right.
is so transformational. Have you found that same thing in your work?
Well, because I'm a therapist working with individuals and couples and families, I don't see what you see. And I actually think it's really brilliant to have other other parents, adult children with other children's parents.
Yes.
Like because if it's their own family,
Yeah.
they're going to be in the, kind of maelstrom. And they're much more likely to listen to each other.
Mhm.
Um,
Certainly. I've had people say that explicitly. I had an adult kid, um, a girl just recently, this was 2 weeks ago, that she'd been estranged from her mom for 10 years. And she was on a call and listening to another mom, not her mom, another mom talking about her daughter and the grief that she was just going through, not speaking to her. And then she told me in an email, she was like, something about how that mom was describing her daughter just reminded me of my mom.
mhm.
And my guard wasn't up because I'm not triggered by her, this lady speaking.
Right.
Um, so it's almost like it could get through, and it really softened my heart and helped me see my mom in a new way. And I think I'm going to reach out and just see what relationship could look like just over coffee. And I was like, wow, like a 10-year boundary that
Uh-huh.
in her case is needed for her season and for her process, but that there can be a spark of insight from seeing the story in someone else's eyes. Man, that's more
Well,
transformation. That's more powerful in my opinion than all the psychoeducation. I've put a lot of work into that, obviously, but that I can't teach.
oh, absolutely. But you can provide the conditions
Exactly.
under which it can happen. And but I do think the psychoeducation is such a good way of creating a neutral context,
Well said.
you know, as opposed to, you know, the group coming in with everybody having strong, irrational emotions.
Oh, they have plenty of those too. Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
Yeah. Mm.
well, that's very exciting.
Yeah, thank you. I
Well,
mean, in the psychoeducation, it was important. I mean, a lot like your work, I wanted to integrate what I saw, so many of these different traditions holding and just some of the sparks of insight. And like I was really inspired in the first section of the psychoeducation by Sue Johnson's work just on negative cycles, just that she drew out affect and zeroed in on just like the interactions, the attempts at attachment between the two, but that miss each other, and the
mhm.
importance of responsiveness. And I know through our dinner conversations that you were actually instrumental in helping, in the brain process or the theory building stage when Sue, you and her would talk occasionally about. some of those things as she was working on her material. Is that right?
Well, yes, she and I actually worked very similarly. I mean,
Yeah.
she built a method, so obviously there's a huge difference there. But but she didn't know a lot about trauma.
Right.
She intuitively did, but she wanted to pick my brain for the trauma piece.
Well, you're a good brain to pick. Yeah, that makes
Oh,
sense.
yeah. And I picked her brain for all so many, um, I suppose you could call them technical, but they're much deeper than technical. You know, her idea of titrating risk.
Hmm.
Like you don't have to take people full bore into their deepest, darkest emotions, even if the method you're using has emotion in the title of it.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. Yeah.
Right? And the importance of helping people take as much risk as they're able without taking more than they're able.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That patience in the process of not overwhelming them. Frank would always tell me, be with, not in. That was his way of reminding me over and over. With the distress, not in the distress.
Right,
With the
right,
memory, not in the memory.
right. Very, very well said.
Yeah, yeah, he's good at that. I
Yeah.
and then after the cycle stuff, so really inspired by Sue in that way. Moving into the trauma work, I mean, I've loved, of course, internal family systems. That's Frank's world as well, but the parts work were crucial. EMDR was really inspired by just the work with I mean, Francine Shapiro's work, but also some of the EMDR 2.0 and the Flash, kind of some of the things that have trickled out of that world are just really inspiring and interesting.
Right.
Um, I've been, maybe you can think about this with me. Do you think that there's self-led interventions that help people reprocess memories, or do you think that has to happen in relationship? Like, are some of these flash kind of procedures where you kind of go in and systematically work through a memory and some of the steps, do you think that those can be effective, or do you think the relational component with a therapist or with someone else is an ingredient that can't be taken out? Do you have an opinion on that?
I do. I think, the relationship with the therapist is as triggering as it is healing,
That's a great point.
you know?
Yeah.
So it's kind of six of one, half a dozen of the other. I think, I think very highly of I mean, I haven't been trained in them, but I'm thinking of brain spotting
Yes.
and the flash technique. They're really helpful to people.
Yeah.
And so I'm all for it. And I happen to be somebody who doesn't believe in trauma memory processing.
Oh, really? Can you open that up for me? That's interesting. I haven't heard that from you yet.
Yeah, because I probably maybe just in the last few years, it's really struck me that people who have traumatic events have those traumatic events in a context of an unsafe environment.
Right, right.
Yeah. So, whether you're abused, you know, every day or once a week, your home never feels safe. Your family doesn't feel safe, right? If you're a victim of domestic violence, maybe you only get beaten up every few weeks, but you don't feel safe any of those other weeks. If you're a soldier in combat, right? You don't feel safe on the days that nothing happens. Um, right there. So I thought, trauma isn't just the event. Trauma is the unsafe environment. And that's what we have to heal.
Hmm.
And I think that's part of what your estrangement work is doing, right? It's healing a piece of the environment. It's not addressing the traumatic memories,
Mhm.
but it's addressing the traumatic context. So, you know, family members who haven't felt safe with each other learn to feel safe with each other. And
Hmm.
that's healing.
Yeah. I love that. You've just put words to something intuitively that I feel really deeply.
Yeah. Yeah. It
I
just,
love that.
I mean, it's so simple that when I started thinking about it, I thought, why did we never think of this before? Why
Yeah.
have we been so focused on the details of the events instead of thinking, you know, w- once there's an event, the whole the whole environment feels
Mhm.
dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, Gabor Mate speaks about that really eloquently.
Yes.
He talks about it's like it's not just the abuse or the trauma, it's what happened after. And
Yeah.
so much of the time what happened directly after is actually the thing that carries the most weight. It's not just the abuse, it's that I had to be silent, no one talked about it, there was no justice, no one held it.
Yeah.
And
Or I was comforted by my abuser.
yeah, yeah. And then that was so confusing. Yeah.
Right, right. And and then there's the when will it happen again?
So well said.
Yeah. So so
So,
that's really the what's interesting me. And it also makes me feel like it kind of honors the survivor more because
mm,
otherwise we're saying that that certain events can alter the whole direction of our lives
yeah, yeah, yeah,
as opposed to our circumstances can alter the direction of our lives.
yeah. Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah, it's empowering.
Yeah. And that's why thinking back to our conversation about your kids, however many years ago, it's why you can't you can't fuck up too badly with kids as long as you keep the environment safe,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Oh, and how reassuring that it's not one bad thing you do that's going to mess them up or something. Like that you don't actually have that kind of power in just one. Well,
Right.
and now that you're saying this, this is really honestly the bedrock of what I'm teaching in the program that what causes estrangement is rarely just one mess up. Like it's a whole context. And I talk to kids and I try to explain this. It's hard. It's hard to take in as a parent to really, because I never want to shame anyone or put any labels or put blame prematurely on anyone. That's never my goal. It's not useful. But to say like, a lot of the kids, they often grit through their relationship with their parents that they feel perhaps like parentified by or enmeshed or whatever kind of label you want to use. Like if there's diffuse boundaries or lack of boundaries and it's like it feels unsettling and so they feel this sense of threat or dissociation or they're kind of numbing out or they're with but not really emotionally present and they kind of give these like one word answers and when you text them it seems like you get very minimal zero effort and they don't call very often and it feels like why is all the effort coming from one side of the table and the kid is kind of like maintaining an attachment but at a pretty cold distance and then there's a cutoff and then that's like well what did I say? All I said was I made a comment about their new tattoo. All I did was I made a comment about their job. Like all I did was bring cookies to the grandkids when you said no sugar. Like really, am I worth cutting off a whole relationship just because I broke the sugar rule? And then I'm like trying to zoom out, and that's where I use the cycle language that we were talking about earlier. It's like there's likely actually a pattern, not just one event that led up to this feeling. And that's not to say that any particular parent is a failure or they're a bad parent or anything like that. It's like it's a pattern of missed attachment needs, either needs that were expressed that were missed or injuries, attachment injuries that shut someone down to not feeling safe. And everyone can have good intentions. Like I often talk about like most of the ways we hurt our kids, we had good intentions.
Right.
But, it's not obvious that the love that we feel in our hearts is always the love that is experienced by our kids,
Absolutely.
you know.
Absolutely. Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Or,
It's
you
yeah.
know, or you can be a parent who's out of touch with their hearts.
Hmm.
through no fault of their own.
Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of hope too, though, because when that can be witnessed, that repair can happen really quickly because I really do think the gravitational pull is towards that attachment.
Mhm.
Like we only got one mom and one dad. That's how we got into Earth, was through those folks. And granted, obviously there's attachment injuries that are so severe really early in life that makes it to where there really isn't much of an original attachment to kind of cling back onto.
Right.
But for a lot of people, let's say the normative population, there is this gravitational pull to wanting things to be re-engaged, even if it's partial. And that's really where I kind of set up camp. I'm curious about your opinion on this. It's like for most people, it's not that we keep our distance and then we get these magical communication skills that makes it so that my parent, takes accountability for all the things I wish they did and they admit to all these things and they say sorry and then they change in all the ways that I prefer they change and then become the perfect, warm, ideal parent. I'm like, that's likely not reality. What
Right.
most often happens is you do the healing work in you so the past stuff, congrats, you can heal that. Like you don't need them to heal your past stuff. That's actually a lot of power to give somebody that they're the ones who determine your healing. So, thank God we can heal that through our own process, through different attachment relationships that we form in our life. But then the present day behavior, you're going to decide what scope of relationship is really healthy and possible with that person. Because it could be that you hang out with mom occasionally and you talk about movies, or you hang out with dad and you play golf, or whatever it is. And then you wish that you could talk about all these things in your parenting and they could give you advice on this and the other and they could be aligned in these values. But for most of us, we settle with a partial relationship, and that partial relationship can still be very fulfilling and very
Right.
warm. It's not fulfilling if you're constantly triggered and you're constantly drawn back into your parts. But when there's a self-led effort and acceptance for, like you were saying at the beginning of our interview, like change, there might be a 10% margin of change, maybe 20. If you have a really committed parent and kid, maybe more. But realistically, we grieve the ideal parent. We grieve what can't be recaptured from childhood and what can't be reenacted here in the present.
Right.
And you can survive the grief.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Do you have thoughts on that? I just went on a big monologue. I'm sorry, but you
No,
got me
no,
going. Yeah.
no, no. I was actually thinking about families and how hard it is because also um, it doesn't work if the parent can't acknowledge. I mean, I'm thinking
Hmm.
about situations where the parent is either the perpetrator or the non-protective bystander,
Yeah. 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 Right.
and and how you know and how I can't see the estrangement work working without the parent being able to acknowledge, I didn't mean to, but I see that I've hurt you.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That is certainly a precondition for any emotional intimacy. I
Right.
think there's somewhat like surface relationships that I've seen people navigate without that acknowledgement. But there's worlds of grief. I've really seen it be a great gift to the adult kid when the parent can come towards and acknowledge that. It gives the kid a sense of great relief to be like, you're not crazy. You're not
Right.
making it up. You're not being dramatic. You were
Right.
right. That should have never happened. It's a huge relief.
And when the parents I'm thinking of a particular client of mine, when the parents are in 100% denial that anything happened, and when their posture has been, we were given the most difficult daughter in the world,
Oh, yeah, it's so hard. Yeah.
right? And so she doesn't feel safe in their presence,
No.
right? And so that feels like a different kind of estrangement.
Yeah, that's why I really don't put the flag on reconciliation because for some people that's just not possible.
Right.
The phrase that we say in the group over and over is peace with what's possible.
Right.
I don't know what's possible, but I want you to feel peace with what's possible.
Right.
And what's
Whatever.
possible changes sometimes, so we kind of keep an open mind for what the future brings. People change, not always, but sometimes. So
Right.
but you're right. I think, what do you say in those moments when you're talking to parents where there is that almost hard lined, almost tunnel visioned? I mean, it's like the abuse is so obvious that it was happening. Like let's take the case of a father who's abusive and a mom who kind of turned a blind eye. When mom is like, "No, it didn't happen. You're crazy. What are you talking about? Why would you say such a thing about your father?" And the evidence is surmounting. Like let's say even like police have gotten involved, the verdict's been tossed, but mom is still locked in. How do you, on a case conceptualization level, how do you think about that?
Um, well, and does the mother now believe the daughter?
Right. So let's say she doesn't. Let's say she's kind of in denial there.
Well, then I can see why the daughter
Well, certainly. Yeah.
would say, "I'm sorry, I need to be estranged because you're not a safe person to be around."
Yeah.
I ran groups for mothers of incest survivors for 20 years, not the same group, people cycled in and out. But it was striking because the conditions for being a mother in that group were not having known at the time of the abuse, and when they were finally told by the daughter that the daughter had been abused, they supported the daughter. If they were still in relationships with the abuser, that was the end of the relationship. And the mother was committed to supporting the daughter.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
Right. So, what was shocking to me was how the mothers didn't know. And then after a while, it wasn't shocking because I realized that these, you know, if you're going to be a pedophile, if you're someone who abuses your child, you're not thinking with the average person's, you know, sense of right and wrong,
Right. Right. Right.
right? So you manipulate the situation to make sure nobody knows.
Hmm. So the deception is really thick on both mom and everyone else.
Right, exactly. And of course, the children believed my mother must have known.
Hmm.
How could she not have known?
Yeah.
And it was very hard for the mothers because they were not believed. Very hard for the daughters because the daughters thought my mother knew and she did nothing.
Hmm.
Um, so so I learned from that group not to assume that the mother knew
Hmm.
unless there is some direct evidence.
That makes sense. What were the resolutions in that? What were some of the aha moments that came in those women's process?
Well, ironically, the hardest thing for the mothers was that it's not easy to support your adult child when that adult child is triggered all the time, including triggered by you.
Hmm.
So they would try to be supportive, and the daughters would get triggered and just devastate the mothers with their anger.
Hmm.
And some of them um, would get pulled into sort of being their emotional, the daughter's emotional support 24 hours a day. So they couldn't, they couldn't do their jobs, they couldn't sleep at night because their daughters were calling them in crisis. They had to figure out, what does supporting your daughter mean? Does it
Hmm.
mean that you have boundaries? Do you get to have boundaries if you're a
Yeah.
mother whose kid got abused on your watch?
Hmm. Oh, I have 10,000 questions for you on that. That is so rich. That's so great.
Yeah, I mean, you can just imagine. Um, the mothers were tortured by guilt, um,
Oh, of
shame,
course.
Right? It's like, who do you tell?
Yeah, and everyone would immediately run to judge you. So it'd be so hard to tell and other people and get support because of the social shame of that as well.
Right, 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 right. And then of course the concern for the daughter's privacy. So often the daughters said, you cannot tell your friends and
Mm,
other family members, this is our information to share, not
yeah,
yours.
that's right.
And so the parent was left holding all these secrets. Um, I mean, it was very hard, but to give the mothers credit, they worked so, so, so hard.
Yeah.
And psycho, maybe that's why I was so impressed by your psychoeducational component, because psychoeducation made a huge difference for the
Hmm.
mothers. If they could understand what was happening, it was
Hmm.
easier to deal with.
Yeah, I found the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, well said. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is lovely. Uh, I feel like you and I could talk all day.
Yeah, I'm loving it. I'm just,
Uh,
Janina, I'm so grateful that you asked me to come on. I just can't. I mean, I'm sorry if I'm singing your praises too much, but I just really have enjoyed your work and enjoyed the conversations we get to have, and it's just been really meaningful to me. I got to sit at your when they gave you the Lifetime Achievement Award at the Networker a couple years ago, and just seeing the testimony of so many of your colleagues and people you've worked with, and Bessel and Frank and everyone else, just you you really have kind of put your mark on history and the lives of so many people, and so it's an honor. It's an honor to be here with you and to speak with
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. To be continued, I'm sure.
you.